Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2016 webinar series of IHE. My name is Paul Dow. I am the Secretary of the Planning and Technical Committee of the Cardiology Domain of IHE, and we welcome you to our annual showing and telling of everything exciting in the cardiology domain. With us today, we have Dr. Alan Katz, Planning Committee Co-Chair from the Catholic Health Services of Long Island. We also have David Slotwiner, the Planning Committee Co-Chair from the Weill Cornell Medical College. We have Nick Gawrit from Heartbase, the Technical Committee Co-Chair. Antje Schroeder, the Technical Committee Co-Chair from Siemens. Again, myself, Paul Dow, and Charles Thomas from the Regional Heart Center of the University of Washington. Chris Melo from Philips Healthcare, and Pamela Heller from the American College of Cardiology. We will have a diverse agenda here of 7 topics that we will flow through pretty quickly, and certainly have some question and answers available time at the end. So we will hand it off for the cardiology domain overview.
Hi, good morning. My name is Antje Schroeder. Welcome to this meeting. I would like to start with the overview of the cardiology domain, which was formed in 2003. So we've been doing work for the last 12 years on IHE topics. And within that, we address specific clinical workflow needs and issues in the field of cardiology, as well as try to optimize the information sharing within the cardiology domain, which ultimately would lead to improved patient care. So we address both aspects, the in-hospital environment as well as the physician practice offices. Our main sponsor, and thanks a lot to that, is the American College of Cardiology, but we also get sponsoring by the American Society of Nuclear Cardiology. We also get a lot of support from the Heart Rhythm Society as well as the American Society of Echocardiography. In all the work we are doing, or our work is closely related to what is happening in the IHE radiology domain, especially with regards to a lot of the workflow profiles which we adapt from that domain. Dealing with patient care coordination issues, especially with defining reporting templates and content profiles. We do a lot of that similar to their domain. Obviously, a lot of the IT infrastructure is used by us. There's some shared profiles with the patient care devices domain, and with all the quality research and public health domain, we have some relationship to all the registry-related profiles that we developed in the last years. Could you please go on? So, and within our domain, we wanted to summarize what our goals and missions are, and so we developed this key message map, which you can see on that slide. It basically summarizes what the benefits of standardization in the health IT field in IHE cardiology are, and provides some details how IHE cardiology fits in this whole picture, as well as how the ACC and their ongoing effort for our domain fits into that. Also, it gives some overview where we see the major gaps in for future development, how we want to position ourselves there, and also how people interested in this work could be helpful or support our activities. And this whole aspect of the key message map is in alignment with our strategic plans, which will be detailed later on by Dr. Katz within this presentation. So you'll learn some more information there as well. Thank you. Next slide. So the one thing which we are looking at are the trends we are trying to address, and one of the major aspects that is going on for a while is that we deal with care coordination demands. So we address those by trying to use the clinical document architecture to define reporting templates based on a common standard nomenclature. And by doing that, we kind of want to be in alignment with the United States ONC and CMS objectives when it comes to the aspect of quality reporting. And one general trend within the healthcare IT standards area is the new Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources Standard developed by HL7. And we start looking into how we could leverage that work for the IHE cardiology. Another big important group of topics that we are addressing is in the area of registry and quality improvement programs, as well as also research, where we're really profiling how to use standard data elements for clinical use, but also for secondary use, like registry submissions or other quality improvement programs. And in general, we look into the workflow and expand our applications to best practices and health IT, so that we can address both the inpatient environment as well as the ambulatory environment, so define the access exchange of information and also how we can incorporate imaging information into this whole workflow scenarios. Next slide, please. So a lot of our current focus, therefore, is in these key areas. We did a lot of work in the area of structured reporting, as well addressing like the clinical procedure reports, as well as registry submissions. With regards to registry submission, we had been focusing on the EP registries from the NCDR, which is then the registry submission profile for electrophysiology, which we developed last year. This year, we started looking into how we can leverage the CDA structure for doing a Katz PCI registry based on the 5.0 version. But we've also done a lot of work in the area of clinical procedure reports. This year, we added structural heart information into the Katz report content profile, which we developed 3 years ago. Or 2 years ago, we also developed a content profile defining the content of an electrophysiology report, especially dealing with the implant and explant aspects. Next slide, please. And still, we have a lot of our existing workflow profiles that are available for testing today, or also for implementation. And these are mainly addressing workflow issues in the inpatient environment as well as in the ambulatory environment. They address a lot of the reporting aspects as well, workflow-wise, as well as with regards to the content of the reporting. And also, which is kind of different from radiology, we have to deal with signals like the ECG handling. Next slide. I want to give a short overview of what kind of profiles we have in each area. For the inpatient environment, it's basically all the workflows we defined there are aligned with the radiology scheduled workflow. So it's about scheduling cardiac exams or doing unscheduled exams, the image acquisition, including the scenario that you have multiple modalities involved. It's all about the management of data and demographic information. So it's about the information exchange between cardiovascular information system, PACS systems, imaging and waveform generating modalities. And so the idea is that we get a consistent, robust workflow and don't really have a lot of manual tasks involved in the data entry aspects. Examples are the cardiac catheterization workflow, which also has an extension to deal with intravascular imaging, which is especially interesting with IHE Japan and was developed in close cooperation with them. But it also addresses echocardiography and stress, the exchange of evidence documents, as well as how to handle reports. Next slide, please. We kind of used the experience and the profiles that we developed in the inpatient environment and extended it to the ambulatory workflow to allow the bidirectional integration of medical imaging equipment and office EHR systems. This profile in general is not so specific to cardiology, but could be extended to each or to a lot of other medical fields as well. So the idea is that rather than the whole aspects of a cardiovascular information system, a hospital information system, you have an ambulatory EHR system, a mini-PACS or a cloud PACS, and imaging modalities. So it's kind of focused on that kind of environment. Next slide, please. We have in the risk with regards to reporting, we have two types of profiles. The one is a displayable reports profile, which deals with how you distribute reports along the hospital, the various information systems in the hospital. And then, as I have mentioned before, we have quite a bit of profiles in the area of report content. A lot of them will be defined or described in the later parts of the presentation, so I won't go into those in more detail right now. Next slide, please. And lastly, we deal with management, the display of ECG signals, as well as a complete workflow, which we see in a multimodality environment, which is then similar to what has been done for the other modalities as well. So thank you, and I'll hand over to Dr. Katz for addressing the strategic planning of the domain.
Antje, thank you very much. That was a great presentation of all the good work that Cardiology has done over the last. I would like to talk about and I was wondering if we could bring up slide, please. Paul, is my slide?
Yes, yes, the challenges facing IHE cardiology.
I don't see it for some reason while I'm looking at the presentation here.
Okay. Well, certainly the slide is up, so I would say certainly you can address.
So let me do this. I have a copy of my own, and I'll go.
Excellent, thank you.
Forward. So the challenges that are facing the IHE cardiology domain are not dissimilar from what are facing other domains. First of all, we need to increase awareness among both the clinical users and the health IT vendors of what IHE is and how it can help both of them. There's not many volunteers available. I can speak from the clinical community. Many of the physicians are very busy. There's a lot that's on their plate, and it's difficult to involve new people, even though we try our best to show them what the goal would be and how it would improve their workflow. Regulatory obscurity. I am happy that ONC in its next iteration of what was happening with standards did accept two of the profiles that we've created as important. We need to do more of that. A better blend of clinicians and engineers. Again, we have more engineers available than we do have for clinicians. I don't know of any or many sites that are asking their physicians to be part of IHE for a good commitment. We also have to align with other activities in the field of healthcare IT. Cycle timelines and organizational timelines differ. So in the cycle, the engineering cycle may take a couple of years. The organizational timelines, particularly for budgeting, it takes place within a year, and that usually starts sometimes at different months at different institutions. Mapping terms to nomenclature with increasing complexity has been a challenge, and then, of course, the universal challenge for all of us, and that's funding. Paul, next slide, please. So I believe the next slide is on the health policy statement. Is that correct, Paul?
Actually, it's on how to participate in IHE cardiology.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. I guess they were mixed around. So how to participate in IHE cardiology? I think there's multiple ways in which clinicians and engineers can involve in IHE cardiology, and I wanted to outline those. So first of all, to visit the www.ihe.net apply site and contact Paul Dow, who is the IHE Cardiology Secretary and been immensely immensely important to moving this process along. Also, there's room to participate in the IHE domains and committees. The IHE organizational members are welcome to have others join. Also, if you can't join, please submit a work item proposal. The calls for proposals open on August 10th of this year and conclude on September 30th. If you have an idea for work items that would like assistance assembling and submitting the forms, please contact Paul. Non-members participate also, and they participate in the comment periods and implement IHE technical framework. So there's a way for everyone to participate. Next slide, please. So tell me, are we now looking at the health policy statement? No? Yeah. Here we are. Yeah. Okay, thank you. It's interesting. So I'm proud to have been associated with a 2016 health policy statement that was started by the ACC, endorsed by the American Society of Echocardiography, the American Society of Nuclear Cardiology, the Heart Rhythm Society, and the Society of Cardiac Angiography and Intervention. It's a statement in support of integrating the healthcare enterprise. And we had several objectives, and I really, again, have to thank Paul for spearheading this. I have to thank John Windle, who co-edited it with me, David Slotwiner, and a host of cardiologists who were involved in the HIT task force, the ACC HIT task force. So what was the objective? To educate clinicians, industry, and regulatory agencies about IHE organization, process, work, and products available to date, as well as strategic plans. We really wanted to educate them as to where they could find value in IHE. Takeaway points: data standards aren't enough. IHE defines integration profiles based on clinical usage scenarios using existing standards. Broad range of participants contribute to success, and profiles work for new equipment installs and upgrades. So this paper will be published, will be available first of all online on August 15th, and will be published in JACC soon after. It'll appear actually in JACC on September 20th, and will be reprinted in an issue of the Journal of Nuclear Cardiology after that. Next slide, please. I think that concludes my section. Is that correct?
Says strategic planning with the registry submission profiles and workflow content profiles.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you. So the registry submission profiles are very important, and in fact, with meaningful use and some of the other requests, they're absolutely essential. So we're looking at cardiac specialties, and we want to automate workflow processes. For the first registry that we're looking at is ACC CAP PCI, and we've also looked at the Pinnacle registry for doing some direct integration. Workflow and content profiles continue to be important to us. There's a shifting emphasis from imaging to data flow, and of course, structured reporting is only now starting to be accepted, and we're moving very hard toward being able to implement structured reporting and all over reporting in cardiology. Some of the nomenclatures, standardizing use of nomenclatures and coding systems include ACC NCDR, which is the National Cardiovascular Data Registry. That is the arm that supports ACC CAP PCI, Pinnacle, ICD registries, and many others. IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, SNOMED, LOIN codes, and selection of codes from standardized vocabularies for specific clinical concepts. So once again, as I'm sure all of you know, IHE does not create standards. It uses existing standards to improve workflow and to improve content. We are working very hard with the help of many people, including Dr. Slotwiner, to expand the applications for the electrophysiology lab. There is a white paper and a health policy statement available, and we will hopefully be looking at the challenging workflow in the EP lab very soon. Next slide, please.
So next on the agenda, I'd like to cover a little bit about structured reporting. This is Chris Melo from Phelps Healthcare. And so as noted by Alan and Antje, one of the strategic areas of focus is unstructured reporting, and for cardiology specifically. We're now starting to see that clinicians are beginning to understand and realize the value of having structured reports. This will be able to, for them being able to know where the information is in the report, being able to interpret the precise meaning of specific data elements included in the report, and being able to share this information to other clinicians and for secondary purposes, with the net result being of having the semantics preserved in a computable format. Currently, many reports today for both imaging exams and procedure reports are still unstructured. Many of them are still produced as paper reports, or if electronically, we're definitely seeing a move towards electronic generated reports, but many of them are still blobs of data, either as PDF files or just as simple narrative text. Simple or not so simple narrative text. Often you get complex language that exists and can be read, but cannot be interpreted. So this is not in a computable format. Another issue with this is that clinical concepts may not be represented in a consistent way. So the result is that the clinical information, when it is shared amongst clinicians or even with the patients, may not be interpreted in the same way as intended, or may not be as readily available where and when needed, because it's not electronically available. And for the electronic clinical systems, which are all moving towards the EHR to be able to share all these documents, won't be able to have access to that information. So the target state for this really is to get electronic structured reports with consistent structure and discrete data elements coded using standardized nomenclatures for the clinical concepts. And so and how do we get to there from where we are today? Well, there's two aspects to this. And ultimately, we're going to look at the clinical workflows so that we can get a process defined and supported through use of standards to be able to collect all the different information across the care continuum processes from all these different generators of the data and make it available to them through the information systems, through the electronic systems that are used, and make them available in a computable format for other clinicians and other users to have access to as well. So there's really, overall goal is to optimize the data capture process and have it so the individual data elements are captured once and then reused multiple times where and when they're needed. So we look at this, there's two aspects to this. One is the representation of the content, and the other is the communication of this information through exchange protocols. And the initial focus in the cardiology domain over the past several years, has been defining on how to represent the content for these cardiology-specific structured reports. Next slide, please. So, as I said, our goal is to focus on standardizing the report. Includes report organization, so that's where information is included in the report. So, and the other is the representation of that clinical information. So, looking to want to maintain that the users of this, the clinicians, we don't want to disrupt their workflow and what they're used to. So we want to organize the content such that it's still familiar to the clinicians as what they're experiencing today and where they would typically want to find it. So they're looking to, in effect, make an electronic form of what they're used to today of those hard copy reports that we're used to seeing. There are a couple of specific use cases that we're supporting and their primary usage of the structured reporting. One is that really for care for the patient, for all those care providers across the care continuum, that they can leverage what's created through the cardiology care that's given to the patient and becomes a part of the care record for the patient when and where it's needed. So that's a whole host of electronic systems and then eventually making it available to the clinical clinicians and care providers who would benefit from having access to that data. Another big purpose for this is for structured reporting is for the quality and safety improvement areas of focus. And so this also gets into the registry reporting aspects of it to some of our cardiology-specific registries, as Alan mentioned, and also for safety issues as far as getting the FDA and be able to track, for instance, the device manufacturers and the usage of specific devices. So if there were recalls, you'd be able to track this down fairly easily. Next slide, please. So the secondary goal of this, or the second area of focus that we've been addressing is on representing the clinical concepts in coded format. And for this, it's not sufficient to allow folks to just represent a clinical concept such as a problem or a procedure using text or using their own selected code set. We need to have consistency across the industry, so when the report is shared that contains this clinical concept, it can be interpreted in the same way and understood by both the consumers as well as the producer of that report for semantic interoperability. So actually, as part of the content profiles that we've been creating, been defining the clinical concepts that need to be represented in the reports, such as the interpretation, such as the measurements that we make or annotations that are made for cardiology procedures, and have those represented, and we actually select value sets from specific clinical vocabularies that would be accepted across the industry. And what enables us to do all this is that the HL7 Clinical Document Architecture, CDA, this is the underlying technology standard that we've been using to define our content profiles. It supports both the provisioning for narrative text so that we can still generate that textual-like report that clinicians are used to, but also be able to have a semantically equivalent encoding of that narrative content through coded vocabularies of the various concepts and represent that into an XML format that can then be exchanged and computably parsed by electronic systems throughout the healthcare continuum, not just in the hospital, not just in the cardiology area, but throughout the enterprises and across enterprises for use for the patient throughout the care continuum. Next slide, please. Again, we look at, want to highlight some of the uses of structured reporting. It's really multi-purpose, and it's not just for generating a report that can be sent off to the primary care physician if a patient has a cardiac procedure in the cath lab. It's really more for that. That's certainly one of the use cases for when to treat the patient through the care continuum and get that available to all care providers for the patient. But also for providing specific details related to how the care was provided that would be of value to government or regulatory agencies, and even for the registries for reviewing various aspects of how the care was provided. It's also important to help optimize the efficiency of providing that care across healthcare. As we all know, healthcare is so expensive, and one of the areas to focus on is efficiency of the workflow involved with that, so that the data is only collected once and used multiple times where and when it's needed. So the result of using this, getting structured data and just capturing it once and using it multiple times, is that we can get more efficient workflow and reduce the manual steps that are present in some of the workflows today. And the fourth area is that we can also use it to assess the quality of care to help identify where potential improvements may be considered in how we provide care. So the sharing of clinical information as structured reports is enabled for all these purposes through the use of interoperability standards. One for defining the structure and content of that report, and for that we're using the HL7 Clinical Document Architecture, and also leveraging HL7 Consolidated CDA Implementation Guide templates as a basis for many of our content profiles. And then we're also leveraging specific nomenclatures for representing the concepts rather, to enable the semantic interoperability of the content of what we're exchanging. Next slide, please. And so one of the key points we're trying to do is have a consistent format for all these types of reports, structured reports that we're creating. So we're going to include a narrative summary, what clinicians are seeing. We're also enabling the association and linkages with the images that are relevant for the procedure, for the imaging exam that's done, and also if they're external documents, be able to provide a mechanism to link into those. And then we're structuring the content of the structured reporting in using these common categories of pre-procedure type information, the procedure-specific information of what was collected during the procedure, and then a set of information that may be derived or created and defined after the procedure itself. These are a set of results and interpretations for the procedure imaging exam is done. So this is a common grouping that we're trying to use across. We're finding it's working pretty well across the different specialties. And one key note I'd like to make, not only just the general way of approaching the content profiles, but also for structured reports, but also attempting to leverage CDA templates across the different content profiles that we did for the different types of structured reports, between cath and EP procedures, for instance, and also between clinical procedure exams and the registry reporting reports that we are creating in the registry content submission profiles. So that's a key area that we not want to have each of the different reports have a whole different set of templates and code value sets, but we're trying to harmonize those across cardiology domain. Next slide, please. That's the end of the structured reporting section.
Excellent. Now for the trial implementation supplements for the 2017 Connectathon. Is that Nick?
Okay, so this is Chris again. This is a number of supplements are available for trial implementation focused on the structured reporting area that we've been focusing in. There are several of them, and we'll get into a little brief introduction to all of them. We have the cath report content. We have some enhancements to that. Charles Thomas will give us an overview of that. We've also focused in on the electrophysiology procedure reports, specifically peripheral explants, and Nick Gawrit will give us an overview of that. I'll provide an overview of the cardiac imaging report content for diagnostic imaging procedures for cardiology, and then we'll get into registry content submission profiles, and Pamela Heller from ACC will give us an overview of the electrophysiology registry content submission for electrophysiology profile. So next, I'd like to turn over to Charles Thomas for the overview of the CRC profile.
And good morning. So the cath report content is for cath procedures, diagnostic, angiographic, percutaneous coronary interventions, and added during the last 2-year cycle has been the structured heart interventions for both aortic, mitral valve replacements as well as the MitraClip. The CRC profile is in fact based upon consolidated CDA HL7 standard. It is targeting specifically, it does not include that imaging studies should be pediatric studies, EP procedures, and non-cardiac procedures, including peripheral angiography and interventions. Typically, there is an imaging study associated with these procedures. However, in the case of right heart cath and biopsies, for example, imaging is starting to be deprecated just because of the radiation concerns. The narrative of the text is unconstrained, but the data elements for procedures we are moving towards harmonization with the observations that are required for the various registries for CAP, PCI, TAVR, and the new emerging registries. Next slide, please. So in October 2014, we proposed the addition of structural heart procedures to the existing CRC that was already in trial implementation. And for the last 2 years, we have been working on the addition of the structural heart procedures. And we submitted the updated version for public comment in May, and then handled the public comments and then submitted it for the trial implementation. Next slide, please. So the work has been the addition of those items in the patient's history, planned procedures indications, the measurements for baseline and post-procedure that are part of structural hearts, complications. Those have been the focus areas for the additions to controlled vocabularies required for these observations. Next slide, please. And specifically, if you are going to dive into this, these are the tables where those changes have occurred, and it's pretty prolific. Some of these are very extensive, and I would recommend that if this is an area of interest that you dive into the publication. Next slide. And part of the work is to actually create the examples of this, both the human readable text, and in fact, we collected many, many procedures to review, and then to create the example as a consolidated CDA document. Next slide, please. And that example is also now available to all of you for review, both in the text form and as an XML example in the published documents, cardiology published documents on the IHE FTP website. And I think we're going to move on to EP RC now. And this is, I don't know who is presenting this.
This is me representing it.
Okay.
All right. Basically, talking about the EPRCIE, we put a lot of effort into EPRCIE, and there's a lot of connection between CRC and this version. So we've made a huge amount of reuse of information between the two profiles. So if you've gotten on board with CRC or you want to start at EPRCIE, a lot of the information that you're going to get involved with programming and developing will be able to be used in the CRC or vice versa. So with that background information, the EPRCIE profile covers all the different areas of implants, explants, pacemakers, things that you need to do in the EP lab, lead revisions, the whole structural relationship of how reporting should be for all implant, explants, procedures in the EP lab. And you'll see on the slide here we have all this listed of nomenclature. There's plenty more nomenclature beyond that that we have adopted from a standards perspective. And one of the more interesting things that you see on the slide is that whole reference to IEEE. There's another profile called IDCO, which allows you to track information from the patient device when they're at home and monitor the patients and bring them back in if there's problems. And what we've incorporated in this procedure is the actual IEEE coding information. So if you want to track information from the initialization of an implant and then have that go and feed into perhaps the IDCO profile in the EP workflow, which I think David might be talking about a little bit later, that's allowable and doable here. And the big thing you'll see with using anything in the structure reporting area, a lot of the questions is why are we doing these kinds of things? Well, it's, as Chris was talking about, you can get blobs of data, and it's very hard and tough to get it out consistently if you're trying to harvest information from those different sources. And so by doing it using content profiles, we're allowed to take information, standardize it in a way that can be used
both at the EHRs through all the harvest and all the different processes. So go have a look at the EPRC-IE profile. Any questions that you can direct to the committee, and I think you'll find some really good stuff there, and you're going to be some usage of it happening very shortly in the field. So I encourage you, if you're into EP reporting, to have a look at this profile.
And so this is Chris back in. One of the actually the first content profile that Cardiology Domain produced and focused on was for diagnostic imaging exams. And this was several years ago, and is focused on these specific imaging exams, which were generally associated with, actually had a DICOM study. In fact, we require a link to a DICOM study for this report. And what we're trying to address here is the fact that DICOM structured reporting was not widely accepted, especially in the healthcare enterprise. And so we wanted to provide a CDA-based representation of the imaging study report for that type of imaging exam. And so you see the list of imaging exams that were supported here. This was also noted that it's based on a set of key data elements as defined by ACC, AHA. So we were looking to get understand what the data set required was to be able to include in this report. And they, in fact, also leveraged, from a structure perspective, some of the IHE patient care coordination CDA templates. I should note that at the time that the HL7 consolidated CDA did not exist. It was not in a approved state. So this content profile, it's still available for trial implementation now. It's been tested at 2 connectathons now, but this is not aligned currently with the CRC or EPRC profiles because it was not based on the HL7 consolidated CDA templates. This is available for implementation, and there's also consideration within the domain committees potentially upgrading this to align with the CRC and EPRC and the HL7 consolidated CDA templates. So if there's interest in this type of structured report based on CDA, also would solicit input on that as a potential work item going forward for the next year. With that, I'll turn over to, any further questions, we can take a question there at the end, but yeah, turn over to Pamela Heller for the RCS-EP profile.
Thank you, Chris. As you know, the ACC is committed to interoperability standards such as the HL7 CDA and the standard nomenclatures. So with that, it's been releasing the IHE profiles as the foundation for submission to the NCDR registries. The registry content submission EP profile specifies the data and structure and vocabulary for submission to the EP registry suite, which supports the electrophysiology procedures related to the ICD and atrial fibrillation ablation procedures. The scope of the profile is consistent with NCDR specification for providing data and required value sets as separate harvest for the AFib and ICD. And it has been implemented by vendors for submitting data to the EP registry suite in 2016. And it's this only transmission standard for submitting data registries, so it has been implemented. We focused on the reuse strategy of harmonization with common vocabulary with EPRC, IE, and also with reuse of templates from CCDA and EPRC, and specifically procedure activity, procedure, device organizer, and device observations. So the goal in adopting these are open templates, by the way, for RCS-EP. And the goal in adopting this pattern of openness and reusing templates from other profiles is to maximize the ability to leverage prior work. So systems that have implemented the EPRC or the CCDA may use the report content to populate the RCS-EP structure reports, since there's considerable overlap in the data elements being captured. So it should, again, reduce the amount of data entry required to support registry reporting. We have the profile supplement available. Can you please go to the next slide? So we're adopting these, specifically the templates that we've defined in RCS-EP or specified in RCS-EP, we're using as a foundation for registry content submissions, many of the profiles, as we extend profiles across the NCDR registries. And we're focusing on registry-agnostic templates to reduce the vendor implementation burden. So when we define templates for RCS-EP, we can then use them for CAP PCI. In fact, we've been able to use approximately 50% of the templates defined in RCS-EP, and we'll be scoping the value sets, since many of the data elements are shared between RCS-EP and RCS profile. Next slide, please.
So currently there are a couple of ongoing projects within the IT cardiology domain. One of them being working on the electrophysiology whitepaper, and the second one being further development on the registry content submission for CAP PCI registry. So with that, we'll address each of those specifically. So with that, I'll turn over to Dr. David Slotwiner.
Thank you, Chris.
EP.
So I'm a clinician. Just to give perspective, like Alan, I am the co-chair of this committee, and as a clinician, I focus on electrophysiology. And I think you've heard from Pamela, Nick, Chris, and others that we've done quite a bit of work in the electrophysiology space since this collaboration started back in 2006 between the American College of Cardiology and the Heart Rhythm Society. Right now, we're working on two projects. One is a health policy statement supporting structured reporting, and the other is a white paper looking at the workflow for catheter ablation. And so I'd just like to talk a little bit about both of these. The Heart Rhythm Society is committed to helping our members and other stakeholders recognize and appreciate the importance of structured reporting as a fundamental building block for interoperability. And we think that getting stakeholders to recognize this will greatly improve uptake and implementation. And so the purpose of the health policy statement is to really improve awareness and explain the benefits of structured reporting to our members and other stakeholders. So the need for structured reporting, the need for team-based documentation, the need to use base standards for nomenclature and procedures such as ICD-10 and CPT codes, SNOMED, LOINC, etc. And recognition that while structured reporting is critical, the final reports are going to have some text because some of the content just cannot be adequately described by structured reporting. And so we're seeking to bring this to a level that clinicians will appreciate and also explain the benefits of structured reporting, the efficiencies that come from it, the possibility of avoiding duplicate data entry, chart abstraction, seamless connectivity to registries as we've seen, and hopefully data availability for research. On the next slide, you'll see an example of what we were working on for the EP white paper. This is actually a figure from the white paper that's being written, looking at implantable devices. Now, this workflow has been tackled to some degree by the IHE EP report content and the EPRC implant-explant profiles. But let me just take you through it to explain how we will use similar diagrams to create the workflow for catheter ablation. So on the top row, you see the clinical encounters that a patient, in this case a patient with an implantable device, would follow, from implant, surgical implant, to the office, to remote monitoring, and ultimately likely there would be an ER visit, and then explant and implant of a new device would be the ultimate completion of the cycle. On the next row, just below that, you see the key data that's shared at each critical point along this pathway. And for implantable devices, that's mostly device data that's downloaded, uploaded, reprogrammed. And then if you look at the bottom row, skipping that third row, you see the actors that are involved in acquiring, consuming, and generating the information at each step. So the actors, for example, in that first stage would be the implanted device, the programmer, the report creator, report repository, report manager, EHR, charge processor, and registry. And it's a little bit different for each stage. I won't go through each stage, but that is the data, those are the actors that we need to consider. Then right above that, you see the row labeled interoperability standard. And that summarizes the interoperability profiles in IHE that are necessary to cover the data exchange for each stage of the profile. So here we have the IDCO profile, which outlines the nomenclature for implantable devices, the EPRC, which we've heard about, and then the report content submission for EP, and then the MDC IDCO nomenclature, which is really part of IDCO. So as we extend to workflows to catheter ablation and other EP procedures, these will be the diagrams that we'll use to identify which profiles are available, and also where there may be gaps where new profiles and new nomenclature may need to be created. Next slide.
So as I mentioned, NCDR's commitment to interoperability and additional profiles, and we are releasing a RCS-EP version 5 profile in coordination with our upgrade to the CAP PCI 4.4 to version 5. This upgrade of the registry, CAP PCI registry, includes updated AUC data elements for PCI and the addition of diagnostic cath AUC data elements. We will, as I mentioned, we'll be scoping where we have common vocabulary with scoping from EP to RCSC and harmonizing RCSC and EP with a focus on reuse around terminology and the templates. 50% of the templates will be reused, and the clinical structure of the profile. Next slide, please. So common templates, for example, that are used across the registries or for participants, patient demographics, pre-procedure information, laboratory result information, discharge, medication, and many of the procedure-specific templates. The terminology across is reused across or scoped across the different templates, and the structure is the same. So the clinical workflow is the same. Thank you. Next slide.
So in order to allow for some more time for discussion, I will quickly run through these slides. In case you want to participate, and we would really appreciate your help on that, as Alan Katz has indicated, there is a roughly 18-month development cycle, which, next slide please, just quickly step through the step, which goes from a call for proposals, profile selection, as well as a development stage where the technical committee goes through identifying the problem, developing a technical solution for it, posting it for trial implementation, allowing for testing at the connectathon, potentially demo some of the workflows at an HIMSS or AC or RSNA workshop, and then basically also kind of promote it to products to use it in the clinical routine setting. Next slide, please. So on the next two slides, you will see some information about the two committees, and if you would like to support our work, feel free to contact any of us listed on the right side. The planning committee is usually more like the marketing group, which identifies the issues, which is actively soliciting input for the profile proposal step, and then also evaluating what the technical committee does. Next slide. The technical committee is then really the group which does the development of the profiles or white papers, which maintains a technical framework, which liaises with other groups and supports the planning committee with marketing activities. Also, our contact information you can see, or the wiki page where you can gather some more information on our work is listed on there. Next slide, please. As you can see, here are some links for further information, including the IHE Cardiology Domain page on the FTP side or the technical committee's wiki page. You can always contact Paul Dow for more information. And also, as we have indicated before, today the call for proposals will be issued. And yes, the further process will be defined in there, but you can also contact Paul Dow. And I think that concludes the general information and leads over to a question and answers. Thank you for listening and your interest in this presentation. And if there are any questions or comments you would like to make, Jamie, I don't know what the process is, how you usually conduct these.
I've just opened the unmuted all of the attendees. So if anyone has any questions at this time.
Nick, we do have Paul, we do have several questions in the chat session as well, and the Q&A.
Oh, I see that.
Q&A window.
I see that there. Let me see if I can get to that. Stop sharing. Okay, there we go. Yes, so we have from Claude. There are times when a procedure may be unsuccessful, i.e. failed AF ablation. If a patient decides to go to another healthcare system / hospital / physician, is the information transferred, or will the patient have to physically deliver the information? And Chris had answered that as it depends on the HIT infrastructure of the healthcare facility, but these CDA-based structured reports could be communicated using IHE XD-based infrastructure via HL7 messaging, e.g. the IHE DRPT and other electronic means.
Yeah, so there's the key point here, Claude, is that we're focusing on the content profiles, and so in IHE we have content profiles and workflow profiles. So we have not yet addressed specifically we're addressing the content profiles. There are other workflow type profiles and report communication protocols which could be used in conjunction with this. And actually for each of the profile supplements, we do address how the structured reports could be communicated, what options exist for that.
The next question is, with Katz PCI 5.0 not being at Connectathon, is the registry on track to being released in Q2 of 2017? Pamela, I think I'll throw it your way.
Sorry, I was on mute. The target date is Q3, is more towards Q3 2017.
Okay. Will the update to CRC allow hospitals to submit TAVR data to the NCDR STF registries?
So the CRC profile is for clinical procedure reports. It's not for a registry content submission report, but certainly data from that should be able to be used, and that's what we had talked about, reuse between the clinical procedure structured reports and the registry content submission structured reports. So that is our aim, to have data directly extracted from the CRC reports to be used in the RCS, registry content submission type reports.
Next question, will all ACC NCDR harvests eventually use CDA, such as the update to PVI coming out in 2017?
It is expected that that is our submission standard. So it's expected that all NCDR registries would use this as transmission format.
Excellent. From Alex, have unique device identifiers been considered in writing the content profiles?
And indeed they have, and we do have a way to, an understanding of how we're going to approach that. So there is a specific place where UIDIs can be included in the CDA structured reports. There's actually ongoing work in HL7, and we're aligning with that for how HL7 defining how UDI should be incorporated into CDA specifically, into all the families of HL7 standards and CDA specifically. So we'll be following that guidance as it gets firmed up and approved within HL7.
When can we realistically anticipate the adoption of procedure notes using IHE content profiles?
I'll handle that one. I think that we're going to see the content profile start to be adopted very shortly. I'd say within the next 12 months, we'll see the implementation of some of these content profiles for procedure noting. And I think as the standards emerge from the government here in the U.S. and the requirements they're putting on things, I think that we're going to see an adoption of this become more mandated as time goes on. So I expect we're going to see in about the 3 to 5 year window considerably high use of content profiles to exchange information this way and become more standardized so we can consume data points and report way more effectively on our analysis of procedure outcomes and those kind of things. So.
And I think one of the steps we can take as vendors participating in these activities is also move forward in adopting these profiles so that clinicians, when they request for them, that the vendors have the systems ready to be able to support these. That will also help speed the adoption.
I have the question, do I need to be a real techie to participate in the IHE Cardiology Technical Committee?
Absolutely not. Would be my answer. This is Chris, and I think we're looking for both clinical experts to help us, as well as we mean by techie, but you don't have to be actual software developer at all. We use people who understand the clinical domain, clinical workflow processes, also terminologies, nomenclatures, coding sets. We're always looking for folks in that area. General expertise in the cardiology area would be of help. That's my worth.
And being one of the co-chairs, I would completely second that. IHE Cardiology and the technical committee lives by the diversity of knowledge and background that the people who want to participate have. So if you want to participate, we are happy if you would join our efforts.
I second that, or triple that motion, I guess. Yeah, absolutely. If you're willing to participate, there's plenty of room for non-technical people to really help our committee a lot. A lot of times we deal with theoretical type of things, and you are in the field as a clinician, and having that input is invaluable for making these profiles something we can adopt. So, yes, definitely, no techie required.
Yeah, and as a planning co-chair and a clinician and a non-techie, I confirm and validate all that's been said. We absolutely need non-technical people.
Yep.
Excellent. And one last question. How does adopting these profiles help hospitals prepare for MACRA and HIE involvement?
Well, I think one aspect of getting things into a structured, coded format is that when data elements are going to be needed for exchange, you may want to extract some of these for clinical quality measures going down the road. The U.S. government, I think, is going to be expanding in that direction. And so to have the data available for secondary uses, I think is going to be important. Also for getting transition of care summaries exchange, that's one of the requirements currently, the meaningful use in part of MACRA. Having that in an encoded, structured format as input, while the specific procedure reports may not be required yet, certainly elements of that will be used within transitions of care summaries now. So I think that's a step in the movement in that direction, and where it can be of value to even the current requirements for the programs here in the U.S., CMS programs. Other opinions on that?
No, I think you're right, Chris. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today. We did run a little bit over, but lots of good information there. We will be looking forward to any feedback you have, any comments, and certainly when we send out the official documents for the call for proposals later this week, as well as the other opportunities. We look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a very pleasant rest of your day.